everyone that we dealt with was really nice and really felt for us. They were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Can I take photos? This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. You should be calling a current affair.
Building involves more than just personal style. It's about budget, functionality, working with your specific site, and making sure your home seamlessly integrates into your life. I'm Sam Payne, and welcome to Australian Build Stories. Join me as we chat with real people who've embarked on their own building journey. We'll explore their highs, lows, and valuable lessons they learned along the way. Australian Build Stories. Building knowledge, one story at a time. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Australian Build Stories. In today's episode, we are talking all things bathrooms. And I was going to do this as one episode, but I thought we'll do a little bonus episode here. So what we're doing is we're chatting with Georgia in today's episode, and she's talking to us about her bathroom renovation nightmare that you hear from the story that it was a challenge, but she also managed to turn it around at the end, which is great. And then as a bonus episode off the back of this in the next couple of weeks, I will be dropping a conversation with Drew. And Drew is the CEO of TileCloud and Yabby Tapware. And he's got a background in construction management. He's renovated 5 places, and I'm not sure exactly how many bathrooms, but I'd guess quite a few more than that as well. And he also had a commercial tiling company. So he's got a breadth of knowledge in the bathroom renovation space, and he is sharing what some of his best tips are that they see come through all of their brands, as well as what he's learnt from his own experiences. So there's a really nice sort of list of key advice that he gives, as well as some key takeaways in this episode and some great resources as well. So have a listen, learn from George's stories, and enjoy the episode. This episode is proudly sponsored by Homebase Design and Build Centre, Australia's largest building and renovating destination.
Last year in 2023, we settled on our first place, and it's a bit of an abnormal layout. And so there was this tiny bathroom and the laundry was in the living room, and it's this 1-bedroom open plan loft kind of thing. And so we knew when we were buying it that we were going to have to do the bathroom because the layout just wasn't set up for living in it. And so we knew that was going to be something we were initially going to do. We hadn't really planned on any other renovation. We just knew that we were going to have to do the bathroom. So yeah, we'd bought it with that in mind.
With bathroom renovations, it's one where if it's an existing space, sometimes people can come in and they can do a light touch renovation where they could just be changing sort of surfaces or turning fixtures over, but you were putting a bathroom into a new space. So from like a design perspective, how did you approach like layout, and how did you get ideas on what's going to work from a flow point of view?
Yeah. We were limited in where we could put it. And so the floor plan, there were probably only a handful of options we could have done for the space, especially because I wanted to have the laundry in there. So we basically had to have a shower, a toilet, a vanity, and a laundry that I wanted behind some cupboard doors. And so it was just a lot of Pinterest and using Google SketchUp, playing around with where things could go for what I felt was the best functionality. There was a lot of walking into the space, which was this dining room type space, just walking in it and staring at the walls with my arms crossed, pretending that I was in a bathroom and trying to figure out, is this enough distance? Sort of Googling how much space do you need for this sort of thing and trying to make it all work.
I've put together a very handy guide on what these key measurements are, and there's a link to that in the show notes. So have a look at that guide, and that will give you a really good idea of some of those key measurements to make sure you're thinking about. And also it's got some other handy tips in there. Or you can head straight to the website and go to the resources section, and the website is australianbuildstories.com. There's a lot of decisions that you don't think might exist, and then you find yourself wondering how high this goes and the distance between these two things. And
totally. And that room had a window in it that I wanted to put the vanity over, and my background is in film, so I often see cinematographers trying to figure out where the light is. So I'd stand where I thought the mirror would be and try and imagine putting my makeup in front of that, and does that get enough windows? There was a lot of just standing and guessing.
That's really good. You're kind of walking through how it's going to actually work. And you use Google SketchUp, which I think that's a great tool.
I played a lot of The Sims growing up, so it was second
Yeah,
nature.
love it.
Love Google
So
SketchUp.
good. And then so you worked out your design. What was the process in terms of finding that sort of project team to do the bathroom?
Well, there wasn't much of a process, which probably marked our downfall. Basically, my stepdad loves to pinch pennies. Has probably a bit more of a had a friend that was a builder who had helped them out with some projects and owed my parents a favour. And so he was going to do it for us for a cheap rate. Basically, he was charging us, I think it was $400 a day, and he thought it would be 3 to 4 weeks. And so we thought it would be about 20 grand is the number that we had in mind. And to be honest, I really didn't even know where to begin. We are one of the few of my friends that have bought a place and none of them have renovated yet. So we didn't have any friends, and my parents don't live near me. So we didn't have, I think the best place to hire people is through word of mouth recommendations, but we just didn't have that available to us.
And
So, yeah.
did you see any previous projects, or did you find out about the qualifications of builder, or?
Didn't find out about the qualifications. He'd done some work on my parents' place, and then my mum had also been following his business Facebook page, and she said that she'd seen a bathroom that he'd done, and he'd showed me some photos of a bathroom that he'd done. But in hindsight, the work that he'd done for my parents, I think he's a carpenter by trade, and I didn't know, I guess I knew that, but he said that he could do a bathroom, so I just believed it. And the photos of the bathrooms that he'd done, but I think what he'd probably actually done is given bathrooms a facelift. Whereas, as you said, ours was a whole putting a bathroom where there hadn't been a bathroom before, which is obviously a whole nother thing. Whereas I think he had glammed up someone's bathroom before, but it was taking off tiles, putting in a new vanity, more installation type stuff, rather than more complicated plumbing, which ours was. So his intentions weren't to screw us, but yeah, he didn't have the experience. And I didn't know what I was meant to be looking for. I think it's really hard, but the most important decision is choosing your trade. And yeah, I think it's really hard when you've never done it before, particularly because you do often hear these stories about cowboys. So it seems like a safer option to go with someone that you know, but then also if you go with someone that you know, there comes with all these other kind of loaded potential issues. So it's really tricky.
Do you think in hindsight, were there any red flags?
I don't know. I'm not sure if there were necessarily red flags. It all came to a head, and it came evident that there were issues with the build at the 4-week mark. And so I was working from home for a fair bit of that, and I had explained to the builder that I was wanting to watch what was happening, wanting to take photos, wanting to ask questions. Because it's my first bathroom or my first renovation ever, I really wanted to be able to ask questions and be educated. And I figured because he was a family friend, that would be an option. And so I was asking questions, and I did sometimes find it a bit dismissive, which in hindsight I think was a bit of a red flag, because I think sometimes he didn't necessarily, might not have been confident in what was being answered to me. But I think that there's also often a bit of a level of misogyny that can come into play there. I was the one that was running the show, not my partner. And I think that I've dealt with plenty of tradies now since, and I do think that I'm definitely responded to differently than my partner is and just dismissed a bit. So there are things that now I know were red flags that I wasn't sure, like certain heights or certain materials being used. Now the pipes I know that were used, if I'd known, I would have seen, oh, that doesn't seem right, but I didn't really know what I was looking for. So it was a bit awkward, but I wouldn't say there were necessarily big red flags.
Do you want to share the story of how it all sort of unfolded? Because obviously it was seemingly going on track for a period of time.
Yeah, so basically we got to the end of the 4th week, which, as I'd explained, he'd said that it would be about 3 or 4 weeks. So we were just going off that. I don't know how long it normally takes. So it got to the end of the 4th week, and he had started tiling, and I had said, how about I get a tiler on board to quote. Also, we were doing a checkerboard tile for our tiling. So once it got to the tiling part, that was also the aesthetic part where I started to pay attention and care, and I think also had a bit more confidence to know whether something looked right or not. I have no idea whether pipes in a certain organization are right or not. Whereas once it got to tiling, I was like, okay, I'm going to pay attention and make sure it's laid the way I want and that sort of stuff. So it got to the tiling. It was a bit behind schedule, and also I was beginning to think this might be where I want someone who's really experienced to come on board. So it was a Sunday. I'd said, how about I get a tiler to come and give, or a few tilers to come and give some quotes tomorrow. We can speed things up and then you can wrap up sooner as well, because I knew that he wanted to finish the job. So I had a tiler come in on the Monday at lunchtime, and he put his spirit level down. He was looking at all the things. Then he put his spirit level down. The builder was in the room at that point, and he was just like, oh, the fall is going the wrong way. All of our fall was going towards the wall instead of towards the drain. And the builder was there as well and was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happened. I'll lift all of these tiles for you and redo them. Really sorry. And I said, that's fine. Not that's fine, but I was like, understood. These things happen. Don't stress about it. I'm glad that we've figured this out now before everything got installed and the wall tiles put on and everything. You lift these, we'll get new tiles, this tiler, or there was another person coming to quote, we'll get someone to finish that part. So the tiler left at lunchtime, the builder lifted all of the tiles, and then after he left, so around 5 p.m, I'd had another tiler that was in the area that was coming to provide a quote. So at this stage, it's just the waterproofing is visible. And then that tiler was like looking around and then said, wait a second, that doesn't look right. Look, your waterproofing is peeling. And I could see in the corners, especially in the shower corners, was lifting up. And I was like, all right, stand by. Before I sign off on either of these tilers, I want to get a professional waterproofer to come in to check this part of the project. That tiler goes home, and I got very lucky that one of the waterproofers that I contacted happened to be in my suburb that night visiting a friend, and he was like, I can just pop by and have a look for you. He comes in and just bursts out laughing and is like, what the hell is going on here? Grabs a piece of it and just pulls it, and it's just peeling off the wall like cling wrap. And your guy hasn't used a primer. He said, did he use a primer? And I'm like, I don't know. He basically says, you're going to want to lift the cement bedding. Yeah, I think it was lift the cement bedding, prime it, re-waterproof it, then tile it. So the waterproofer's like, you're going to want to redo this. So
So that would have been an absolute nightmare if this bathroom got finished by the builder, because you won't notice with that for, I don't know, maybe 18 months, issues start arising. And
well, there would have been other signs first, because the waterproofer went home. I also, in this time, messaged the builder and said, hey, did you use a primer? But was wording it like just trying to be really friendly, like just curious, because I didn't want to create tension. So I'd messaged the builder saying, had you used primer? And I think that is when, and maybe after having spent a day lifting tiles, that's when he realised that maybe things that he'd done weren't right. Because then the next morning, he called in sick, but I also woke up and thought, okay, if he'd said he could tile and he said he could waterproof, I think I should get a plumber out to have a look. And at this point, you can probably see where this is going. I had managed to find a plumber that was in the area that I could pay a call-out fee to come and have a look. And basically, he was looking through it, and keep in mind the cement sheets were still there at that point, so he couldn't see all of the piping. But even from what he could see, he could look down, and it was things like, I don't want to go into too many specifics because I might get it wrong, and there will be people that actually know what this would have been. But basically, it was like there was an elbow angle used where there shouldn't have been because things wouldn't go down properly. But the main thing was that he'd used 40 millimeter pipes for all of the plumbing when it should have been 100 millimeter pipes. And like, I don't know about you, but I know a lot of things that wouldn't be going through a 4 centimeter wide, like it just wasn't. He was like, I'm sorry, but this is all really wrong. But he was keeping his cool for us. And
from when you had the waterproofer come out, the tiler to the plumber, how many days have gone by here?
None. This was Tuesday morning.
This has all happened in like a 24-hour period. How are you feeling at this point?
You'd asked earlier if I'd had red flags. I don't know if I had red flags, but I probably wasn't super confident about everything. So maybe part of the reason that I wasn't freaking out was maybe it was some validation as well. Like I was like, I thought something wasn't fully right, but I didn't have the knowledge or the confidence to know what that was or to question things properly maybe. I didn't have the language to ask the right questions. But I would say by the time, at this time, I was still feeling fine. Like I was feeling, this sucks, but so grateful that we've figured it out now, because 2 weeks from now, we would have had a finished bathroom with all these issues and I wouldn't have known if I hadn't just thought about getting a tiler out. It was probably actually me being like, I don't really like the way this guy is tiling the floor. I want to get a tiler out and I want to get this done quicker. And if I hadn't done that, and if I'd just been like, cool, it'll finish when he says it'll finish, then I never would have realized all of these things. So I think I was feeling a bit relieved at that time, even though it was annoying. But then this initial plumber walked outside and asked to see our sewer, and he just went white as a sheet and he was like, oh my God, I am so sorry. Our sewer was higher than the bathroom that was being built. So that none of the fall would actually go to the sewer. So we were just building a hub.
Just an inlet for the sewer to come through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was basically described to us that it just would have been a room that continued to smell like crap, with the tiles falling off and the water pooling next to the wall. That's what we had built. And that was when I lost it, because that was when I cried for the first time, because basically the solution that we were told was that we would have to raise the floors by 30 centimetres to get enough fall to go towards the sewer. And so what that would mean would be either renovating other parts of the house so that it wasn't just one step up straight into the bathroom. It was like, do we build a kind of split level thing further out from there? So now are we getting an actual carpenter in to do an actual like a big thing? Or even if it wasn't that, it was like, okay, now all of the things, I was still holding on to anything that the original builder had done that we could use, but now we couldn't use any of it, because even the shower niche that we had built would now be 30 centimetres lower if the floor was coming up 30 centimetres.
Yeah.
So that's when I got really upset, because it wasn't just fixing a mistake, it was now a whole redo. And it had been, not only was it expensive, but it was really stressful. Like we were living in the house and it's not fun living through a renovation. And as I said, our house is really open plan. There's no doors. Like it's just a loft. We were looking forward to it being done, and that was not going to happen in a visible end date.
You just found out it's got to start again, basically.
Totally. And it was awkward because, as I said, it was a family friend of my stepdad's, and I still don't believe that he was trying to scam us. So it was awkward on that front as well, because he was well-intentioned, but really just didn't know what he was doing.
He must have been feeling pretty terrible, I imagine.
I imagine so, yeah. Yeah. And so luckily my stepdad kind of, at that point, they live about an hour away. And at that point, I'd been texting him explaining what was going on. And he came in and met with this guy. And I think he was really relieved to be let go. I don't think I think he had realised that he'd screwed up. He didn't want to have to participate anymore either. But I'm sure he felt like crap, because he really likes my parents and was only doing it as a favour to them.
Had you paid him at this time for the work?
We had. Yeah. So what basically happened, and this is probably another reason why I wasn't as devastated, why I was counting my blessings, I think. My parents lent us the money. We'd paid him about 20 grand for materials and labour. My parents basically absorbed that debt. So he owed them the 20 grand and they gave us the 20 grand so that we could hire someone else. And I was quite uneasy about that, because I was unsure if they'd get their money back. And it's just, I don't know, it's messy, it's awkward, it doesn't feel right. I think my stepdad was feeling bad because he'd been the one that urged us, but obviously his heart was in the right place as well. Like there was no ill intent. So it was just really crap. But I do know that the builder has paid a few installments. So it's been nearly exactly a year now when all of this kind of kicked off. And I know that he has paid. And so once he'd made the first payment, to my parents, I started feeling a bit better because I realised that there was intent to pay and blah, blah, blah. So I'm not sure where that is at the moment as far as getting the money back. But from our position, that was something that, again, I was just so lucky for, because there's a lot of people that 20 grand handed over to someone could mark that, I don't know, we may have had to sell a half renovated house or something, but we were really lucky that my parents had that cash available.
Would you have had a plan B if they didn't?
We both have emergency funds, my partner and I. I'm trying to think at that point where it was at, because I do know that as the rest of the renovation went on, because we ended up hiring someone that was more expensive, I basically spent my entire emergency fund. But I think at that point, I would have still had it. Like, I think I had $15,000 sitting in a bank account. So I could have absorbed it, I think, but it would have been really tricky. It was maybe our third month with a mortgage as well. So I think I would have been feeling really insecure about then handing over my only buffer money. So we were very lucky to have that breathing room.
So at this stage, it's a new build, or what was the end direction with that? Did you have to step it up that 300?
Yeah. No, we got really lucky. I had, I think, 6 or 7 plumbers come in that week. That initial one that had come out to review it for us, that was based on paying a consulting fee. But he was like, I'm not going to charge you for this. I feel so bad for you. I think, yeah, it was really nice. And I think everyone that we dealt with was really nice and really felt for us. They were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Can I take photos? This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. You should be calling a current affair, blah, 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 all this stuff. I think from a plumber's position, because also then my boyfriend and a friend started jackhammering the floor so that the plumbers could see the plumbing and what was under the ground. And I think that's when it really came to light how bad it was. So I think most of the plumbers that came to have a look, because A, we were just trying to get second opinions, and B, we wanted to be really careful about who we hired for the next part of the job, because obviously, and also deciding whether we were going to hire someone to manage all of the trades or hire individual trades, making all of those decisions that really we should have at the start, but we just didn't even research suppliers. We just went with the one that was recommended to us.
It's very hard to know because you haven't done it before. You've kind of got no idea, and bathrooms and kitchens can seem on the surface like, oh, that's a good first project. But when you think about it, it's like building a little mini house. You've got the same trades, basically. You can have, electrician, plumber, there could be stonemason, cabinet makers, painters, there could be a carpenter. You can have everyone building a house, and that's a lot of activity for one of the smallest rooms in your house on a compressed amount of time, typically in an active site, which is where you're living. Like it's hard.
Yeah. It was really hard because, I did not know who comes first, electrician or a plumber or all of those things that I'm like, how do you... I couldn't seem to get clear answers about what was meant to happen. And I don't know. It just... Now I feel a lot more confident now that I've done it once. But really, it's very hard, I think, for the first time to just know where to get the right information. So it's great that people are listening to this podcast and might get a bit more clarity on it. Sorry, what was the question again?
So you had 6 plumbers out and they'd worked out how to get around this 30 centimetre floor increase.
There was one that had. So the way that I now went to the drawing board to find new trades. There was one, my dad lives up in the Northern Rivers, but he had a friend who was a plumber who came out to have a look. There were, I think, 2 that I found on High Pages. And the place that I ended up finding our knight in shining armor was I had been trying to get as many supplies as I could secondhand from Facebook Marketplace. And I got a lot of tiles from this woman that lived not too far from me. And just when I went to pick them up, she showed me a bathroom and we were having a chat and she said that she loved her plumber. So I went digging through my Facebook Marketplace messages and found this woman and said, hi, we met 2 months ago. Ha ha ha, that bathroom that I was renovating at the time, can I please have the number of the guy you loved? So he came out and I wasn't home at the time, but my boyfriend was, and he just got a really good feeling for him. And he thought that we would be able to do it without raising the floor. basically, I think there was some level of complicated physics involved. They may have notched out part of the, what's the beams under the floor
The
called?
joist? The floor joist?
Yes, the joist. I think there was one part of the joist that was notched out to get a pipe at a specific angle to get enough fall. But basically, he was the one person that was willing to do it and felt confident to do it. I looked up some of his references. He was really well reviewed. And to be honest, I mean, it was a lot more than we initially were going to pay, but it wasn't as crazy as I thought it was going to be. Like, I thought the quote would be like 60 grand. I think it was, I've got to do a full audit of all the costs in the end, but I think that the bathroom probably ended up being around 40. And I think that probably 10 of that would have been materials, and he would have been with all, and he then supplied all of the other contractors, the electrician and all that stuff, tilers and stuff. So he kind of operated like a plumber builder. And we just felt a lot more confident, particularly given that the quote wasn't egregiously high for having one person to manage it all. We really liked the idea of there being one person that was responsible for all the other trades, particularly because we really trusted that one person. And I could tell that he had the same sort of attention to detail as me and really wanted us to be happy with the final product. And that was proven throughout the project. We did have some issues with tiling, and he really went into bat for us with the tiler that he'd hired, and, you know, things got redone to a way that we both agreed with. So that's why I feel so strongly now that finding the right trade it's worth waiting and spending the time, and it sucks, but it's so important. So yeah, he started, I think it was 2 weeks after the kind of, I don't know if I can swear on this, but the shitstorm, the Monday, Tuesday that was awful. Mm-hmm. We took maybe 2 or 3 weeks pause to make the decision on who we were moving forward with. And it was this guy, Scott, from Steadfast Plumbing.
Shout out to Scott.
And yeah, then it all started. Yeah, shout out to Scott.
So it was a far different journey from when Scott was involved.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Do you have some photos that we'd be able to drop into the show notes as well?
I do. I documented the whole thing because I was planning to make a YouTube vlog about bathroom renovating, and then it went really badly. And I do actually have one. I'll post it next week probably. I finally finished it.
Nice. And then in terms of your involvement during because you're living there, was it every day you'd be checking in what's sort of happening, or how did you sort of have those relationships with the trades and with Scott? Like, what was that? What did that look like?
Yeah. Living there at the same time and working mostly from home was a blessing and a curse. So once a day I'd go down and see what was happening. So I was definitely pretty involved. I wasn't living off-site. And as far as the level of involvement, I would say that by the time it got to about late August was when we were doing the demolition, and I was doing most of that. But I also think, and I didn't realize it until a bit of hindsight, but I was really burnt out.
Yeah, okay.
And I was feeling pretty ashamed of that as well, because I think that historically I've always thought that burnout is reserved for people that have important jobs that are earning lots of money, but particularly in a month when I had taken off from work and wasn't earning money, I then couldn't do some basic tasks, and I just felt so much shame about that. I was like, why am I stressed? I'm not even, earning. And so I had to kind of think that thought out in full to even realize what I was doing. And I'm like, of course I was burned out. That was a really awful few months that I was just constantly waking up thinking about tiles or something.
But when you stop, everything catches up with you. It's overwhelming to go through all of that. And then now that you've gone through that process of having designed the bathroom to having it sort of built and using it as a functioning space, is there anything that you've learnt in terms of, if you were designing the space again, would you change anything, or have there been any like surprises that have come out of things that have worked better than maybe you thought about?
I think that we have a really functional space. I'm really happy with it. Probably the best part of not the best part, but like a really clever thing, I think, was our built-in laundry. That took a lot of consideration, because it's a space that you use all the time, but that this is the only bathroom in our house. So it's where we get ready, it's where our guests might use it, it's where a lot of things happen. So I also didn't want it to feel like you were going to the bathroom in our laundry. So I got these bifold doors manufactured by a kitchen company called Harrington Kitchens. And that was probably the one thing we splurged on. But then the interior, I just IKEA hacked. And there were some kind of different decisions that went in there. It meant that we spent more money on getting a really big vanity, but we only have one basin in it, a big basin in the middle, because that operates as our laundry basin as well, and that vanity operates as our bench space. So it was just thinking about how we're going to use every part of the space. And yeah, like we'd prefer more bench space to be able to put a laundry basket on it rather than a second sink that we don't really need.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. That's good.
And there was the thing that kind of kept me up at night at the end was when you enter our bathroom, the first thing is the toilet. And after we'd already put the toilet in, that's when I was like, oh, is this terrible? Should the toilet not be visible from the door? Have I made a huge mistake? But ultimately, I came to the realization that it was the best space for it. Everywhere else would have been worse.
Yeah. Compromising something else if you'd moved it. Yep. And in terms of advice that you'd have for other people who are embarking on their own bathroom renovation?
So one thing that I ended up finding really useful was this Facebook group called the Reno Club, I think. And I just find that good for, we had another issue with something else that I wasn't sure whether what I thought looked odd was odd or whether that was just normal and I didn't know what it was meant to look like unfinished. And I posted a photo and people were able to give advice. And a lot of people do that, or asking, oh, how much should this cost in Perth? Or how much would this cost in Victoria? How much did your thing cost? Or I just find that really good for, particularly if you don't have many friends that have renovated. I found that really good.
Even if you do, because the advice you get on there, you can see from the comments that you're like, this is clearly someone who has done this 20, 30 times, and people are really responsive.
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah.
And just even to get that reassurance of like, don't worry, that's what mine looked like 6 months ago. It's on the right track. It's good to just have that sort of stuff, because it can be really tricky navigating relationships with tradies. Like, you want to trust them and respect what they're doing because it is so important and it's a really important skill. But at the same time, there are all these stories of cowboys and things going wrong. So you can also understand as the client being that people are on edge about it and want to make sure it's right. So I do find having that kind of third party where you don't have to question your tradie, but just also get the reassurance that you might need that things are going the right way, because ultimately you have to live with it. I think resources like that are really useful.
Yeah, nice. Cool. Thanks. That was really good. Thank you very much for your time today and sharing your story on the podcast.
Pleasure.
What a cracking episode. We covered a lot of ground today, and I hope you got some great takeaways from that episode. As I said at the start of the episode, we've got that bonus episode dropping soon, so keep your eyes and ears out for that one, and have a look at the show notes to get access to some of the resources. There's the measurements guide. There's also a couple of good links from other providers. There's one on some general timelines that has come through another bathroom renovation company, and a whole bunch of other bits and pieces. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. I'll see you next time.